Welcome to Reddit Aliens. What is your creepiest experience ever? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Parents were out of town, but let me borrow their vehicle. Still lived at home first year of college, and my younger sister did too and was in high school. I went out with some friends and drove back home around 2 a.m. It's dead of winter. My parents live in a pretty dense forest, houses every 200 to 300 meters away from each other. I pull up to the laneway and I see the front door of the house is wide open. I'm just like, oh, F, dear God. I instantly went into panic mode, like imagining the worst, LOL. I tried not texting or calling my sister because I was like, what if someone's in the house and she's hiding and her phone starts ringing or buzzing and she gets caught? So I legit drove up to the garage to go in through the basement. I took a metal shovel and snuck into my house. I went up the basement stairs around the corner to shut the front door and then sprinted to my room. I then waited for like 45 minutes, heard nothing, then texted my sister and she texted back like, what's up, I'm just sleeping. I then went to the kitchen and turned on the light and there was nothing. My two dogs were both just sleeping on the couch. About 5 minutes later, there's this massive gust of wind outside and it throws open the front door. The latch or whatever was just shitty or frozen or something, so the door just kept getting blown open. It was effing scary because it was so dark and windy and there were no other houses or light sources, so I felt like I was just walking into a haunted house. Grandmother had Alzheimer's. Dad took her in to live with us. She liked to steal things. Woke up one night with her at the foot of my bed with a knife. I screamed, asked her if she was okay, and she replied, yeah, just hanging out. I mean, just the image of waking from a dead sleep and seeing someone standing at the foot of your bed with a knife is enough to really qualify as creepiest. So, and it's your grandmother? Whoa. When I was in like 8th grade, I had a project that was due and everything was done. I just had to print out some pictures. It was late, but I didn't want to fail. I was a pretty independent kid and knew how to catch the bus and stuff, so I didn't see a problem and just went out while my mom was still at work. After I print out the pictures, I'm talking to my mom, informing her of where I was, and I go to walk back to the bus stop to go home. As I'm walking, a man on the sidewalk across from me stops and starts talking, but really lowly. I couldn't make out what he was saying, but I'd feel bad for ignoring him, so asked him to repeat himself, and he didn't get louder. After I just said no and continued walking, and so did he. I told my mom, and she said to wait at the library rather than outside for the bus and just come out when it's just a minute or two before the bus comes. I start walking back to the library. It's just a few feet away, and I see the guy in the distance turn around and literally start running at me. Of course, I scream and dash to the library. The scream was enough to stop him, since I kept him in my eyesight and saw him stop and turn around. I was walking down the street and a guy approached me and offered me $20 to help him move a mattress, so I said okay, easy money. And I walk up to his apartment and he offers me a bong hit. I didn't smoke pot, so I just said, no thank you. So we move the mattress, and when we're done he grabs my balls. I just ran out of there. He didn't threaten me or anything, and he was probably just high and a closeted gay man who couldn't get laid. But it was pretty scary because there was no way I could have fought back. He was probably 20 years old and I was 13. When I was younger, from about 4 to 6 years old, I remember seeing one of my neighbors staring at me constantly whenever I was outside. I always just assumed he was making sure I wouldn't get hurt since the shared garden I played in was blocked off from anyone except the neighbors. I also asked some other kids that lived there and was told that he did the same thing to them. And I basically never thought anything of it until I remembered seeing his face in the front page news one day. So I asked my mom what happened. Turns out, his wife had found child porn on his computer and he was arrested and, as far as I know, in jail. Not sure for how long though. It creeps me out now thinking about him staring at me and other kids there, and I'm kinda glad I'm on the opposite side of the country from there now. Growing up, we lived in a house where a lot of creepy things happened, but two standouts. We frequently heard noises upstairs and in between the stories of the house when no one was up there. But one Sunday night after dinner, my mom called out from her first floor bedroom where she was folding laundry to come in there. Me and my grandma were the only ones close by to her, and we came in. She was pointing at the ceiling and looking up. We all heard slow, distinct, heavy pacing footsteps going from one end of the room above to the other. The only other people in the house were my brothers, who we could see watching TV in the living room, and my dad and grandpa, beyond them drinking coffee in the kitchen. Besides disembodied footsteps, the weird thing was the pacing did not match the layout of my brother's room above. The way the furniture was positioned, you couldn't walk straight back and forth. You would have to go in a sort of U shape around the bed, but I don't know why all three of us thought that was weird, since I guess if you have the power to manifest footsteps without a physical body, walking through furniture is no big deal. The second one is kind of hard to explain. I have to tell it in reverse. After I had moved out for college, I came home for a weekend or holiday. My high school age brother was still living at home, and my cousin about my age was also living there. In my brother's room at some point, I happened to see a piece of notebook paper with an odd sketch on it. It appeared to be a doorway, with the door slightly ajar, and two circles in the lower part of the open space between the door and its frame. Immediately, I was struck with a panicked chill. I couldn't wait for my brother and cousin to get home to ask them who had drawn it and what it was. Turns out, my cousin had drawn it to illustrate to my brother something he had been seeing sometimes at night while in bed in what had to be my room growing up. It looked like two small heads, one a bit taller than the other, peeping into my room from the hallway, silhouetted by the ambient light from outside the bedroom. My reaction when I saw the sketch was a reflexive memory of terror, as I recognized the real-life scenario this sketch depicted, because I had seen the same thing on many occasions when the room had been mine. If it was there every night, I wouldn't have been scared, as I would have just chalked it up to some unfortunate but totally rational shadow cast by something innocuous from the hallway. But it scared me that it was there some nights and not others. Despite the lighting conditions being basically the same every night, it would even come and go at different times on the same night. It really seemed like two small dark shadow figures were watching me sleep and not even particularly caring if they got caught. It wasn't really possible for anything in the hallway to create a shadow. It was a very small hallway that was basically just all the doors of the upstairs room and closets. There was not enough wall space anywhere to hang decor that could cast a shadow. And how can a shadow be cast in the open space of a door left ajar? That space would have to be occupied to create a silhouette. It could not be a shadow of something more distant. Still gives me chills. I was in a pub, using the toilet in the stall. I heard the door open and listened as a man and a young boy came in. The man was helping the young boy, his son or grandson I assumed, use the urinal since the young boy was too short to use it. They talked back and forth and nothing seemed nefarious, so I cleaned up and exited the stall. The conversation stopped when they heard me flush, and when I came out, I saw there was just an old man by the urinal, no little boy. There were two distinct voices, and one was very convincingly a young boy. The man was silent and avoided eye contact, and I washed my hands and left without saying a word. Only recently, an older man was seemingly following my family and I around the shopping center. I had to go to the bathroom, so I broke off from the group momentarily. I looked behind me and noticed he was still following me quite closely now. I was getting closer to the bathroom and was terrified about what might happen should I have to confront him alone, so I turned around and told him, "F off." I was shaking. I've never really been confronted by anyone like that before. I'm not super intimidating. I'm 5'4", and I have the upper body strength of a T-Rex. He put up his hands and innocence and didn't say a word and just stood there. A tall, large man was walking by and asked, "Is there a problem?" I said, "This man is following me." The man stared at us blankly, then turned and walked away, not saying a single word. I don't want to imagine what could have happened if I didn't confront him while there were still people around. Or, plot twist, it could have been an innocent mistake, and I told someone to F off for no reason. I guess I'll never know. So, little known fact, I played Dungeons and Dragons, and the first rule is never split up the party. That being said, the fact that you did that, unfortunately, this is the world we live in, so, oh well. Good job. My creepiest took place at a cemetery. It's one of a handful of times when I actually was afraid of something beyond my comprehension. I'm no stranger to haunted places. I've been to quite a few of them over the last several years, and I've felt quite comfortable in those places. I did a solo trip to a local cemetery at the time after hearing it might be haunted. This was done on a bright summer day, and my main intent was to take a look at some of the statues that were in the place. The cemetery had open borders, so I was visiting during legal hours, and the place wasn't busy. Something felt wrong as soon as I crossed the border into the cemetery. It felt like I was being watched from a far distance, and it didn't feel friendly. I actually took a look around me, and upon seeing no one looking at me, I kept going. That feeling got stronger the more I stayed. When I got to the children's cremated section, I actually was afraid to look in the mirrored wall because it felt like whatever was staring me down was right behind me. All hell broke loose when I had enough. I was in the middle of the cemetery and actually getting a headache from either nerves or something else. The staring feeling was almost painful at this point, so I basically raised the white flag and headed back out. It was almost as if I was wading through water because everything was moving sluggishly. The sun seemed to dim even though there weren't any clouds. All noises stopped completely, save for me trying to get out. The scary thought that I had was that this wasn't a spirit. It was toying with me as a cat does to a mouse, and I already knew I wouldn't want to stick around to see what would happen. When I finally crossed back onto the sidewalk, everything returned back to normal. The sun was as bright as ever. I could hear all the normal sounds you'd associate with summer. The staring didn't go away, but it felt like the thing was standing on the other side of a glass border it could not cross. I have only felt something like this 2 times since then, once in a section of woods and the other at a haunted asylum. I don't know what those entities were, but I have no desire to find out. TLDR. Ran into something at a local cemetery that didn't like me. My bedroom has a window next to the front door, so I often get up from my desk to go to greet people at the door as I see them coming up. One morning at 3 a.m. or some insane hour, I was laying in bed and heard someone in high heels come up to the door and knock. I was too freaked out to get up and check and thought it may have been my imagination. After about a minute goes by, and I hear high-heel footsteps walk away. At that point, I was more awake and couldn't have imagined it. I told my mom about it the next day. She asked neighbors, but we never found out anything about it. This was before Ring or other door cameras were widely available. It could have been a case of having the wrong address, or you could have missed out on a crazy opportunity, or you could have been murdered. But curiosity not getting the better of you is good. I probably would have opened the door. What about you? My husband is military, and our first duty station was in Germany. I'd been there like a week and had already made a friend on the flight over. She had housing already, but my husband and I were in the hotel still waiting. I get a call one evening that my new friend is freaking out, saying some weird shit is happening in her house. Okay, cool. I head over there to keep her company. I get inside and look around. It's pretty nice. Big kitchen, nice dining area. It's a bit cold, but that's fine. We walk down the hallway, talking quietly because her boys are upstairs asleep, all 3 under 5, and we go into her living room. There's another doorway into the kitchen, and I feel compelled to look. All the cabinet doors are open, every single one. It took us less than a minute to cross down the hall and go sit down, and there was no way one of the boys did it because we passed the stairs. It was just scary. We shut the door to the kitchen, not wanting to deal with that. That's when the knocking started. I'm kind of annoyed at this point because there are 3 sleeping babies upstairs. So I ask the ghost, which I watch paranormal shit on TV. I'm not stupid as to what is happening. Please stop, you'll wake the boys. Kinda like exasperated. That pissed this guy off. I felt a tug on my hair. Then there were heavy boots upstairs. The husband was not there. It was just us ladies downstairs and the babies up. And more knocking. And German. Angry German being screamed at me, but only I could hear it. So I kinda just sat there in shock, like, holy shit, this is a poltergeist. It continued on, to the point the boys all ran downstairs. There were things being moved and tossed around upstairs, and I'm begging this male ghost to stop quietly, telling him they are just children. I try asking him to go into the light. I try asking him who he is, trying to figure out what to do. He's mad. I feel that. Where we were stationed in World War II was a SS training camp. When I remembered that, I had only been there a week at this point, and this was overwhelming. I started to explain that this war was over and the US and Germany were allies now, that our families were there to help protect Germany. It was weird, but everything seemed to stop. At this point, I needed air, as did my friend. We went to go outside, but as I reached to unlock the back door, it swung open amazingly hard at my face. The chain on the door stopped it from hitting me. I got angry again and said I would come back in the morning. Honestly, it was utterly terrifying, and I didn't want to go back, but I had some white sage that my friend could use. That was not the only scary thing that happened on that base. There was a shadow person that liked our building and would stalk around. There was shit that moved on its own, lights flickering. That base was extremely haunted, and I have so many stories, but that one really takes the cake. It was the moment I realized ghosts can be extremely dangerous. That asshole attached to me for a year, and it took walking into a church and getting blessed, even though I'm not religious, to get him to go away. Utterly terrifying.